I'm Jesus Navarrete. I'm from Mexico, and I did a master's degree here at the Minimum Cost Housing Group in the late 80s. And then after that, I was hired first as a research assistant, then as a researcher, and finally I also did some teaching as part of the group. From my time at the Minimum Cost Housing to the time I started working at the IDB, which is the Inter-American Development Bank, I went through a PhD, which I did it at the Bartlett at the University College London, and yeah, the connection is quite important. Here at McGill, I learned basically many things, but what I can take or I can identify as my takeaways, I can focus on three things. The first thing is that I learned some important foundations, theoretical and analytical foundations, to understand housing as a dynamic process. The idea of progressive development of houses, which I already knew when I was in Mexico. I've seen it because I used to work during my undergrad at the National University. For me here, it was like they provide me with the tools to understand and analyze it in a systematic way. That is something very important in my career, because based on that, I developed my master's thesis, which was on the progressive development of houses in a sites and services project in Mexico. At that time, I was interested in what were the priorities of people when they were building their houses. They wanted more livable spaces, or they wanted houses with better quality materials. That was the subject of my master's thesis. And from there, I went into, and based on that research, I went into my PhD, which I continued the research. But at that time, when I was at the PhD, I was more interested in how this progressive development and the user control of the housing production was incorporated in public housing policies. And that's what I studied at my PhD. So the connection was quite direct. It was also through that I was invited to participate or to join the IDB. That was one of the things. The other things that I learned from, or I consider a valuable thing from the minimum cost housing, was the approach that was a research-based education, but with an extremely, I would say, thinking out of the box approach. They were doing extraordinary things that when you look back now, you could tell that they were such ahead of their time. You know, I remember publications like Use It Again, Sam, or Stop the 5-gallon flush, that these are the issues that right now we're working in development housing in all over the world, but especially in Latin America. Those things have to do now with resilience, have to do with mitigation and with adaptation to climate change. So for me, that idea of, if you want to find solutions or appropriate solutions to the housing needs in Latin America, you should think out of the box. You should look for alternatives that have not been explored. And I think my period at McGill showed me a lot of that. The other thing that I like from McGill, and I'm being used it right now, is that they always found, or they always put people at the center of the whole process of searching for solution. Especially for housing, we wanted to see, or they wanted to see at that time, what were the needs of the people? What were their priorities? What were their aspirations? And based on that, I think they came out with fantastic research like the whole, how the other half builds, which I participated in. And you know, and this is something that we're still using, and I'm still using in my current work. While I was here, they were still carrying out the research, how the other half builds. I think already they had published two of the three publications. So I joined them at that time, and I participated in the last one, in the self-selection process, which is, I saw the publication somewhere there. And at that time, I was involved in the, more in the research. I was not a student anymore, but I was part of the teaching team, and yeah, that was combined with some field work that we did to India, which I visited India twice as part of this research, and we not only visit the slum areas where they actually did the research, and we investigated, you know, how the other half builds, basically how they use their space, how they use the public space, which is not only for living, but also for socializing and for commercial activities. That was very interesting. And I also visited, as part of that project, the Aranya housing project, which was designed by the Vastu Shilpa Foundation, led by Doshi, which was a fantastic experience working under his leadership. And we actually saw how all these ideas, all these new ideas, all alternative ideas on how you should plan housing for the poor was realized. We did some interviews with the users, and I believe it was used after for post-occupancy evaluation. So that was extremely rewarding, and actually that was one of the reasons why I did my research at the Bartlett in a PhD, because I wanted to see how the progressive development of the houses and all these new ways of understanding how people use their houses can be incorporated in public housing. While I was doing my research at the Bartlett, I did a lot of research on how the multilateral banks influence housing policies in developing countries, especially in Latin America. And that is the connection of why I ended up at the Inter-American Development Bank. That's it? All right.
It's so great. Perfect.